Hello semester 5, greetings from Sanjay sir and welcome to this video lecture of mine in which I will be discussing one of the poems which has been prescribed in your syllabus in semester 5. The name of the poem is The Old Playhouse, written by Kamla Das, and Kamla Das, as you all know, is a confessional poet. We shall be discussing the confessional features of her poetry as we go through the text. In the meanwhile, I will expect all of you to keep the text of the poem ready. And before that, let us have a quick glance at the career details and also the biographical details of the poet Kamla Das. So Kamla Das was born in a Malayali Nair family in Malabar on 31st March 1934. Her father V.M. Nair was the managing editor of the widely circulated Malayalam daily Mathrubhumi, and her mother Nalpat Balamani Amma was a renowned Malayali poet. So you can say that Kamla Das had inherited the art and craft of writing from her illustrious parents. She has written in plenty in Malayalam language as well, and to the Malayali fraternity, she is known as Madhavi Kutti. As far as her contribution in English is concerned, Summer in Calcutta was her first poetry collection. Then came The Descendants, The Old Playhouse and Other Poems. We shall be doing the title poem in a short while from now. The Stranger Time, Collected Poems. This collection was published in 1984. The Annamalai Poems. Then Only the Soul Knows How to Sing, and Ya Allah in 2001. She has also published her autobiography titled as My Story. She has received awards and honors. She got Pen Asian Poetry Prize in 1963. In 1968, she got Kerala Sahitya Academy Award. And in 1984, she was shortlisted for the Nobel Prize in Literature. And in 1985, she was conferred the Kendriya Sahitya Academy Award for the poetry collection Collected Poems. She died in 2009, to be precise on 31st May 2009. But she died as Kamla Suraya because she had converted herself to Islam in order to get married to a Muslim man. This marriage, of course, did not materialize. So this was about the background of the poet Kamla Das. Let us start the poem The Old Playhouse. All of you have the text ready with you? Here it goes. You plan to tame a swallow, to hold her in the long summer of your love, so that she would forget not the raw seasons left behind, but also her nature, the urge to fly, and the endless pathways of the sky. This poem is addressed to the poet's husband. Her husband was a self-centered, conceited man. He was a pleasure seeker. And in this poem, the poet narrates the traumatic marital experiences, and she uses the metaphor of a bird to narrate the miserable captivity she was subjected to in her marital relationship. She says, you plan to tame a swallow, to hold her in the long summer of your love, so that she would forget not the raw seasons left behind, but also her nature, the urge to fly, and the endless pathways of the sky. A swallow is a small bird. It's a migratory bird. And when it gets cold in the home country, the bird migrates to warmer places in search of food. So the swallow, the bird, here represents the wife. She says, she tells her husband, you planned to domesticate me like a swallow. You plan to keep me in your sway, just as a swallow is captivated by the warmth of summer season, just as a swallow forgets the raw seasons, the winter. In the same way, you planned you 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 plan to keep me in the clutch of your passions so that I may forget not only the unpleasant experiences, the raw seasons alone, also the homes left behind. Homes are cozy, secure places. And also her nature, the urge to fly. You you plan to keep me in your captivity, in the captivity of your passions, so that I forget everything, I forget my existence. I forget my basic nature like a bird. The basic nature of a bird is to crave for flying, the urge to fly. You wanted me not to have that urge to fly, to explore the opportunities in life and the endless pathways of the sky, the endless pathways, the infinite opportunities which the life has to offer. This is how you wanted to have a hold over my existence. So you look at the the captive captor imagery here. The bird is the captive, and the husband is the captor. So keep that in mind. It is not to gather knowledge of yet another man that I came to you, but to learn what I was, and by learning, to learn to grow. But every lesson you gave was about yourself. You were pleased with my body's response in its weather, its usual shallow convulsions. You poured, you dribbled spittle into my mouth. You poured yourself into every nook and cranny. You embalmed my poor lust with your bittersweet juices. It was not to gather knowledge of yet another man. I got married to you, not to get knowledge, not to get an idea of yet another man. She got married to her husband so that she could know about herself. She could discover herself. And in the process of learning, in the process of discovering herself, her potential, she could grow. She could mature into 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 a woman. But what happened when she got married? Every lesson you gave was about yourself. She did not get to learn anything about herself. All she got in that relationship was the knowledge about her husband. She, uh, sorry, he imposed himself upon the wife in such a big way that she lost her identity. She could not see anything else except the towering personality of her husband. She further says, you were pleased with my body's response, its weather, its usual shallow convulsions. The husband, as we discussed before, is a pleasure seeker. His only objective in life is to seek the fulfillment of his own desires, of his own passions. And this is what he tried to derive out of his relationship with his wife. You are pleased with my body's response. The husband was concerned only with her wife's body. He did not love her in the proper sense. with my body's response, its whether its usual shallow convulsions. Look at the word shallow. She responded to his physical moves, but in a shallow manner. Shallow means superficial, not deeply felt. So look at the disconnect between the husband and the wife. You dribbled spittle into my mouth. You poured yourself into every nook and cranny. You embalmed my poor lust with your bittersweet juices. You see, these are minute details of physical relationship between the husband and the wife. But these are not meant to titillate the reader. These are meant to accentuate the effacement of the wife's identity. How her aspirations were dashed in this relationship. She says that you dribbled spittle into my mouth, you poured yourself into every nook and cranny. He was all over the place. He colonized the woman's body. He usurped his woman's body. And she uses an appropriate word here, embalmed. What is embalmed? To embalm is to treat, especially the dead bodies, to treat dead bodies with chemicals so that they are preserved for a longer period in order to arrest further decay. In the same way, the husband embalmed her poor lust with his bittersweet juices. So the wife participated in these physical acts like a mummy, like a dead body. She was a passive partner, and she felt as if she had been embalmed with her husband's lust. You called me wife. Look at the word called. You called me wife. I was taught to break saccharine into your tea and to offer at the right moment the vitamins. She says that she was called wife. She was called as wife by her husband. But she was never treated with the respect of a wife, with the respect a wife deserves. And in a way, as we see, this marriage was a unilateral affair. It was not a bilateral affair. She says, I was taught to break saccharine into your tea and to offer at the right moment the vitamins. So she was a passive partner in the physical acts, and now because she was called the wife of this man, so she had to carry out the responsibility of a wife, the routine responsibilities. These routine responsibilities included breaking saccharine to the husband's tea and giving him vitamins at the right time. So it was a robotic affair. It was a mechanical life for the woman, for the wife. And she, as we can see, she had lost all zest for life. Cowering beneath your monstrous ego, I ate the magic loaf and became a dwarf. I lost my will and reason. To all your questions, I mumbled incoherent replies. She was eclipsed by the monstrous ego, this monstrous egoistical personality of her husband. So much so that she became a dwarf. She lost her freedom, she lost her identity. She lost the will, the willpower to think. She lost her will and reason, as a result of which she became a robot, and she could not answer properly to the questions which were put to her by her husband. So we see a graphic description of the misery, of the suffocation, of the the trauma which she felt in her marriage. And you look at this word incoherent. Incoherent is the pet word of Kamla Das. In another poem, an introduction, she uses the same word when she says incoherent mutterings of the funeral pyres. The summer begins to pall. I remember the ruder breezes of the fall and the smoke from the burning leaves. Your room is always lit by artificial lights. Your windows always shut. Even the air conditioner helps so little. All pervasive is the male scent of your breath. The cut flowers in the vases have begun to smell of human sweat. There is no more singing, no more dance. My mind is an old playhouse with all its lights put out. Now the summer begins to pall. The summer begins to dwindle, fade away. What is summer? The season of love. Well, I'm amazed at the poet's use of this season as a season of love. Summer may be a pleasant season in the cold countries, but summer certainly uh, does not evoke the feelings of love as far as the Indian climate goes. But then we have to go with the poet's choice of season. So the summer begins to pall. The summer of passion, the summer of love begins to fade away, begins to dwindle. It is all but natural. I remember the ruder breezes of the fall and the smoke from the burning leaves. She is mindful of the suffocation that is going to come. She remembers the ruder breezes, the buffets of the strong winds that you experience in the season of fall. The season of fall, when trees shed their leaves and then these leaves are burnt, and the smoke emanating from these burning leaves creates suffocation for the poet, the wife who has already lost her freedom and identity. Your room is always lit by artificial lights. She finds that she is having a feeling of claustrophobia. Your window is always shut. This is the depressing and stifling environment in the so-called high society. Even the air conditioner helps so little. All pervasive is the male scent of your breath. This atmospheric suffocation is symbolic of the suppression which the poet undergoes. It is symbolic of the mental choking that the poet experiences in this relationship. Your room is always lit by artificial light. There is nothing natural about this relationship. Your windows always shut. The air conditioner does not help. All pervasive is the male scent of your breath. The the atmosphere in which she moves, in which she lives, is replete with the scent, with the odor, with the male odor of her husband. What does it mean? It means that the the personality of the husband is all over the place. She has she cannot escape the towering personality of her husband. The cut flowers in the vases have begun to smell of human sweat. It's so suffocating inside that even the cut flowers which had been put in the vases have now begun to smell of human sweat. So she is dying for a whiff of fresh air. There is no more singing, no more dance. My mind is an old playhouse with all its lights put out. Her life is traumatic now, and she has lost her identity, her freedom. There is no pleasure in his life, no pleasing activities, no more singing, no dance, and she feels that his mind is an old playhouse. You cannot miss that wistful thinking, that those pungent wishes which she craves for. The mind is an old playhouse with all its lights put out. Means this playhouse has become dysfunctional now. But before marriage, her mind was like a live stage where she must have been performing various acts, lively acts, pleasant acts on this stage. But now the playhouse is there, the stage is there, but the lights have been put out. So the darkness of the playhouse is symbolic of the darkness which has enveloped her mind and her psyche. She says, the strong man's technique is always the same. He serves his love in lethal doses. For love is Narcissus at the water's edge, haunted by its own lonely face, and yet it must seek at last at an end a pure total freedom. It must will the mirrors to shatter and the kind night to erase the water. Love, love in lethal doses. She says the strong man's technique is always the same. The strong man conquers, subjugates his enemy by serving fatal doses of love. And love is Narcissus at the water's edge. There is a classical reference here. Narcissus in Greek mythology was a very handsome young man. He was in love with himself, and he once saw his reflection while he was standing at the edge of a pond. He fell in love with his own beauty, and then he got disappointed because he knew that he was never going to be reciprocated in his love because he had fallen in love with his own reflection. So there are various versions of this mythology, of this story, and in one version, he all his passions are transformed, and later he gets reincarnated into a flower, into a narcissus flower. So look at these lines again. For love is Narcissus at the water's edge, haunted by its lonely face. The poet feels herself like Narcissus standing at the water's edge. When she reflects uh, at the love she received from her husband, she she gets to see the reflection of her lonely face, the loneliness which was there in her life, and yet it must seek at last at an end of pure total freedom. She felt that she had become a captive, a prisoner of the love which had been served to her in fatal doses by her husband. And she wanted a release from this captivity, from this love, for which she had to reincarnate herself the way Narcissus did. And how is that going to happen? For that, the mirrors have to shatter. She had she has to come out of this relationship. And the kind night to erase. The water also stands for the mirror. These waters have to recede. These mirrors have to be shattered so that she could achieve freedom. She could come out of the suffocating influence of her husband. This shattering of mirrors and erasing of water uh, in the night, some critics say, is suggestive of a suicidal idea. When we talk of reincarnation, to get yourself reincarnated, you have to die. So there is a these lines suggest that the poet is reflecting over suicide, or she is having suicidal thoughts. And as we all know that confessional poetry uh, has this feature, uh, the thoughts of suicide, the thoughts of death are pretty much recurrent in the confessional poetry. So in the final analysis, we see that this poem is a typical confessional poem which reflects the basic features of the confessional poetry, the search for identity. In fact, she rues the loss of identity. There is that pining for freedom, and it is a kind of protest also. She protests against the fact that she lost her freedom. So as far as this poem is concerned, uh, I think the poem is the tone of the poem is largely melancholy. It ends on a depressing note. I believe you were able to follow this poem. I will be putting up more video lectures in days to come. Make the best use of your time. I'll be interacting with you very shortly. Thank you.